Hello, my name is Kylie Bain, and this is my public lecture review 2. So I watched the video of professors debating whether or not we live in a simulation. They discussed a lot of topics, but some include the probability that we're living in a simulation, the factor required to model every operation in our lives, the definition of consciousness, the Mandela effect, and whether or not if we knew we were in a simulation, would that change anything, or would it matter? So the first question is, what did I learn that I didn't already know? A lot of things, but some interesting in the top things that I learned are that one of the professors at Georgia Tech has estimated that there are 10 to the 39th operations that would need to be modeled in order to simulate our society, which is a huge, huge number, but it depends on what you think that the most complicated thing we need to model is. So some other scientists guessed that it was 10 to the 34th operations, and that was because he chose the human brain as the most complicated thing that was needed to model. And our Georgia Tech professor said 10 to the 39th operations because he believes he believes it's more complicated to model external reality. I learned that simulation is defined by one of our professors as a computable reality, and then he argued that everything is computable, and basically, therefore, everything is simulatable or a simulation. I learned the definition of consciousness is not agreed upon in the scientific community, and therefore, we can't really simulate something as being conscious if we don't have a definition of that. I learned that it's impossible to to know if one program is calling another program, and therefore impossible to know if we live in a simulation because there's absolutely no way to know if there's another program controlling us, if that makes sense. I learned that Immanuel Kant argued that the education system is meant to download algorithms into our heads as we grow up, and that they're inherently biased and meant to, as he said, harness the masses, which is super weird to think about, but also kind of true. I learned that if we knew we were in a simulation, it may give us greater probability of discovering the technology we need to be the controllers in the future. And I also learned that memories are physically and chemically edited every time we recall them, and therefore that could be evidence that we're being controlled in some way. At least our memories are, because every time we think of them, they change slightly, and that is causing us to not remember exactly what we actually experienced. Next question is, what did I already know that I learned? And that's the Mandela effect, which is when a large group of people have a false memory or a memory of something that didn't occur. It's named after the death of Nelson Mandela because a lot of people think he died in prison in the 1980s, but he didn't actually die until 2013, which is super weird that a lot of people think that. Like, why does everybody have the same false memory? And it could be evidence of alternate universe or some other unit that has control of our memories. So the Mandela effect sparked my curiosity. Is there a real control going on, or is it just some psychological theory? And then another thing that sparked my curiosity is the number of operations needed to be modeled, which was predicted to be 10 to the 39th, which I wrote out in order to see. And there's no way that we can conceptualize this number because there's nothing in our daily lives that we can compare it to, no physical quantity that we've seen well or enough to know what that number really means. Does it relate to BME? Not really, but in a way, if we're living in a simulation, it's relevant to every single thing in the world. So I guess sort of. BME takes in information from the world and uses it to solve a problem. So you could argue that those that investigate if we're living in a simulation are doing the same thing. And then we also both have to estimate, predict, and inquire. And then I followed up on the Mandela effect because a lot of images there's a lot of things that a large group of people think and that are actually false, like this Fruit of the Loom thing. I always thought there was a little wooden basket behind it, but there's not. This is the real logo. And same with double stuffed Oreos. There's one F on the real logo, but if you would have asked me, I would have said there's two Fs, which is super weird. So are we being controlled is the real question. That's it. Thank you.